as you finalize your plans for the 2019 Game Developers Conference in San Francisco next week. Organizers want to quickly remind you that this year the show will play host 12-hour-long deep dives into the design and development of classic games. This special Classic Game Postmortems rust a few of the many sessions available to you in GDC 2019 session scheduler, but they are a bit more historic than your typical GD talk. Each is successfully hosted by a game dev veteran with lots of stories to share, often for the first time, about their work and their time in the industry, making these sessions a great way to learn more about the history and hidden stories behind some of your favorite games. This year, for example, John Sadowitz, a veteran game programmer whose work won everything from the unparalleled Claxton Medal of Honor, will be at GD 2019 in San Francisco to deliver a classic game postmortem of a Chase arcade hit Paperboy. Sadowitz helped co-create Paperboy, and at GD next week, he will walk you through the design and development process that culminated in the creation of a modern classic. Expect to get an inside perspective on working at Atari, the nuts and bolts of arcade game design in the 80s, and the untold story of developing a now classic game. Plus, Panzer Dragoon designer Yukio Futatsugi and artist Kentaro Yoshida, two Japanese game industry veterans who now work together at Grounding, will be at GDC in March to discuss designing and developing the Panzer Dragoon series on Saturn. As we have mentioned before, this is a very special classic game postmortem, because you get two speakers on not one but three games discussed in depth. The original Panzer Dragoon, which was Futatsugi as a game designer, as well as its followed Panzer Dragoons 1 and the Rock Panzer Dragoon Saga, neither of which have ever been publicly deconstructed like this. Also, Lemming co-creator Mike Daly will be presenting a classic game postmortem of Lemmings, in which he will discuss the creation of the seminal DMA design puzzle platform game, starring those allegedly suicidal rodents, which debuted on Amiga in 1991 and subsequently appeared on a multitude of other platforms, covering both the original title and also its immediate expansions and sequels, including Lemmings 2 and 3. Daly will look at the genesis of the idea, the refining of the gameplay, and just how the clever game developed into a smash hit for the company and its publisher Psygnosis. Last, but certainly not least, game industry veteran Louis Castle, on best for co-founding the trailblazing Westwood Studios with Brad Sperry, will be there next week to deliver a classic game postmortem on the landmark real-time strategy game Command & Conquer. It promises to be a fascinating hour-long deep dive into the conception, development, and design of Command & Conquer, a game that inspired a generation of game designers and helped popularize the real-time strategy game genre. As Westwood's co-founder, Castle was involved from the start, and at GD 2019 next week, he will take the stage to share his experience and the lessons he took from it, as well as insights and anecdotes from key CCTAM members. Do not miss it. Bring your team to GD, register a group of 10 or more and save 10% on conference passes. Learn more for more details on GDC 2019 visit the show's official website, or subscribe to regular updates via Facebook, Twitter, or Gamasutra and GD are sibling organizations under parent company Informa. A few weeks ago, game designer Josh Schaefer caught the attention of his colleagues when he posted a blog about the making of his new game At the Gates. In it, Schaefer detailed how making at the gates challenged his newly diagnosed ADHD, and how he had to aggressively reassert control over his work-life balance in order to not have his own game kill him. With game developers more and more concerned about quality of life, and because Schaefer's got a lot of insight into how Forex games are made, we were excited that he was down to chat about his experiences over on the GD Twitch channel. If you are a game designer going through similar challenges, you should definitely watch the full conversation with Schaefer, which you can now see up above, and for more developer interviews and curated video talks. Be sure to follow the GD Twitch channel. Wondersong casts players as a silly, lovable bard who aims to make the world a better place through song. Singing is the only way to interact with the people and puzzles of Wondersong, tasking players with using their voice to improve the lives of those they meet. Gamasutra had a chat with Greg Lopanoff, developer of the Excellence in Narrative nominated Wondersong, to talk about how a United States-wide bike trip inspired the game's touching story, how clever characters could guide a narrative, and the power of finding a grain of positivity when all seems lost. I am Greg Lopanoff, and I created and directed Wondersong with the help of M. Halberstadt, who did audio, and Bodim Bladdery, who did music. I used to make card games and board games with markers and paper when I was a little kid. When I was a medium kid, I discovered Game Maker and started making dinky little games. Now, I am a big kid, but I am still using Game Maker to make dinky games. I had the idea for the main character when I was singing in the car while careening down a highway. The larger story was loosely inspired by my experience living on my bicycle and riding across the United States of America in 2014 and 2015. What made it all click was when I came up with the music wheel interface though. I wanted to try turning the controller into an expressive musical instrument. It really was an honest expression of how I was feeling after my bike trip. I was seeing stories like Steven Universe that explored similar themes, but really started to notice the lack of those kinds of stories in games. So, when I set out to make a game with a story myself, it felt irresponsible to do anything that contributed more to the regular pile of violence and negativity. Game Maker Studio, art was in Photoshop, audio was in Reaper, and music was Ableton. I made a fairly robust level editor and audio logic editor version inside the game as well. The music mechanic really opened a lot more doors than it closed. It was incredibly fun to come up with new situations and interactions that you did have with singing. We built the game up piece by piece, completely designed around the main mechanic, and tried to keep it surprising and make people laugh. Sometimes it was hard to design the story so that the player felt like they had a relevant role when all they could do was sing. But that friction naturally became a real interesting ingredient in the story itself. I really love making characters. I had a lot of fun giving everyone a unique feeling, voice and personality, and I tried to stay sensitive to what they wanted to do and how they would react to things the player could do. I call it following through. Sometimes, as I was writing a random API, I did realize they would want to have a pivotal role in the story, and the entire plot would change direction. Everything in the game is very sensitive and honest to what the characters want, so I think that really helps them feel real, and like they have a footprint in the story. Most games are built out of repeated tiles, props, and assets. But Wondersong is all about individual expression and unique situations. I wanted to draw every single screen from scratch. so you could feel even the most subtle emotional variations from scene to scene. With that in mind, I carefully designed the visual style of the game to make it as easy as possible to create new assets. The color design was built into my level editor, so I could focus on the colors and hone in on the feeling of each screen tour. The game is constantly asking the player to play with music and express themselves, so it's really important that they remain in an open and playful mood. The visual style is fast and loose and fun and goofy, and I think that helps make a space where that's possible. If the game felt beautiful, like it was taking itself too seriously, I think it would feel intimidating to try to play with. Instead, the raw, fun, uneven quality kind of feels like it's saying, have fun and just try. That closely reflects how we felt making it, too. I wanted to make a happy game for sad people. A lot of people are suffering right now, and it's really not enough to say, chin up.